All right, today we are diving deep into something called acute coronary syndrome, or ACS for short. This is a really sudden, really dangerous medical emergency. Understanding what's actually happening inside your body and the signals it's trying to send you, well, that can literally be the key to saving a life.
Okay, to kick things off, let's just start with a number, a big one. Every single year, right here in the United States, over 800,000 people have a heart attack. I mean, think about that. This is not some rare thing, it's a huge public health issue, which is exactly why knowing the warning signs is so important.
So, what even is acute coronary syndrome? Well, the best way to think about it is as an umbrella term. It covers a bunch of different conditions where the blood flow to the heart suddenly gets choked off. So, it's not just one disease, but a whole spectrum of emergencies, from scary chest pain all the way to a full-blown heart attack.
To really get what's going on with ACS, we have to become investigators. We got to go inside the body, right to the scene of the crime, the coronary artery. Because what happens in there is this dramatic, super fast chain of events that takes a long-term problem and turns it into an immediate crisis.
And who's the main culprit? It's something called an unstable plaque, and it's caused by atherosclerosis. You know, that's the slow, gradual process where fatty stuff and cholesterol build up in your arteries over years. Now, some of these plaques just sit there, they're stable. But others are fragile, they're inflamed, and they are for all intents and purposes just a ticking time bomb waiting to go off inside that artery wall.
So let's walk through how this ticking bomb explodes. First, that vulnerable plaque builds up. Then, for some reason, it cracks open or ruptures, and that exposes its gooey, fatty core to the bloodstream. Now, this core is what we call thrombogenic, which is just a fancy way of saying it's like a magnet for blood clots. The body sees an injury and rushes to fix it by forming a clot. But when that happens inside an already narrow artery, well, that life-saving response suddenly becomes life-threatening. The clot creates a blockage, and the crisis begins.
You can see that whole chain reaction right here. The second that plaque ruptures, it's like an alarm bell goes off in your blood. Platelets swarm the area, and this whole complex chemical reaction kicks off to form a thrombus, a blood clot. Honestly, the best analogy is it's like instantly building a dam in the middle of a river that's supplying a whole city. Suddenly, everything downstream is in trouble.
Now, the size of that clot, that dam, and just how much blood it's blocking, that's what determines what happens next. The diagnosis here is everything, because the aftermath can be anything from a serious warning shot to a totally catastrophic event.
So how do doctors figure out exactly what kind of crisis they're dealing with? Well, they have two main tools. First is an ECG, which is like a snapshot of the heart's electrical system. The second is a blood test for a protein called troponin. When heart muscle cells die, they release troponin into the blood. So, in what's called unstable angina, the artery is only kinda blocked. There's no permanent muscle damage, so troponin levels are normal. But with an NSTEMI, there is muscle damage. Troponin levels are high, even if the ECG doesn't show a huge electrical problem yet.
But then you have the STEMI. That stands for ST segment elevation myocardial infarction. And this is the big one. That ST elevation is a very specific, very dramatic red flag on the ECG that screams complete blockage. It tells doctors that a huge part of the heart muscle isn't getting oxygen and is actively dying. This is a code red, all hands on deck emergency.
Okay, so we've seen the crime scene on the inside. Now let's talk about the clues on the outside. When your heart is in this much trouble, it sends out signals. And knowing these signals, both the classic ones and the really unexpected ones, that can save a life.
These are the textbook symptoms we've all heard about, right? That crushing chest discomfort, the classic elephant sitting on my chest feeling, the pain that can travel or radiate to your shoulder, your arm, your jaw. But here's the thing. These are just the classic symptoms. The story doesn't stop here.
And this is where things get so important. Not everyone gets that dramatic Hollywood-style heart attack. Certain groups of people often show up with very different or what we call atypical symptoms, and this can lead to really dangerous delays in getting help.
So, what happens when the signals your body is sending aren't so obvious? What if it's not that crushing chest pain, but something else entirely? It's a critical question because recognizing these weird, atypical signs is just as important as knowing the classic ones.
So let's look at women. While chest pain is still the most common symptom for everybody, women are way more likely to also have these other atypical signs. Think about it. Sudden extreme fatigue,
shortness of breath, nausea. How easy would it be to just brush that off as the flu, or stress, or just something you ate? This is why awareness is everything. You have to recognize that these could be signs of a heart problem. It's a very similar story for people with diabetes. See, years of high blood sugar can damage nerves all over the body. It's a condition called neuropathy. And if it affects the nerves that carry pain signals from the heart, they might not feel that classic intense chest pain at all. Instead, they might have what's called a silent heart attack, where the main symptoms are sudden weakness, shortness of breath, or even confusion. And the elderly are another group where the signals can get crossed. A heart attack might not present as chest pain at all, but as sudden confusion, dizziness, a fall, or just feeling wiped out and weak. You can see how easily these symptoms could be chalked up to just getting older, which makes a diagnosis incredibly tricky.
So after all of this, what's the single most important message to take away? It really all boils down to one simple concept: urgency. When we're talking about a heart attack, every single second counts.
In cardiology, there's this famous saying, time is muscle, and it perfectly sums up the whole situation. The longer an artery stays blocked, the more heart muscle tissue dies, and that damage, it's permanent. It doesn't grow back. The entire goal of treatment is to get that artery open again as fast as humanly possible, to save whatever heart muscle we can.
So the real takeaway here is this. A heart attack doesn't always look like it does in the movies. It can be subtle, it can be confusing. Your body is sending you signals, whether they're classic or atypical, but you have to be ready to listen. The real question is, will you trust what your body is trying to tell you, and will you act on it without hesitating? Because when time is muscle, every single second matters.